Welcome to Shawn's Horror House. I'll be reading you a story called A Tale of Woe by yours truly. It was a beautiful summer day, and I decided to take the long route home down Hollyberry Lane. I noticed an odd-looking poster. Funny, I'd never noticed it before. The poster appeared ancient with words that were almost illegible. Rust permeated the poster in several places, causing dark brown spots to form over parts of the words. I looked at the poster carefully and read, "Do you believe in fate?" Underneath the words was an arrow pointing to a dark, desolate building that seemed to have been unoccupied for many years. I looked up, and about 100 yards away was the building in the poster. My curiosity got the best of me, and I decided to explore this old, worn, and vacant building. I hesitated for just a moment before opening the door. Inside was a carpeted room with blank walls. I thought this was unusual since vacant buildings often are filled with graffiti. I looked up at a window across the room and saw what appeared to be a fossilized monkey's paw on an ancient stand. On a plaque, in tiny letters, it said, "The monkey paw grants 3 wishes, but be careful as you may get more than you wish for." I looked at the paw. It reminded me of a rabbit's foot. I always thought a rabbit's foot was pretty unlucky since the rabbit was missing it. Was it my imagination, or was there a force surrounding the paw? I hesitated before finally reaching the paw. I picked up the paw and looked at it. One of the fingers twitched in my hand, or did it? It was probably a trick of the light. Thinking it was a joke, I put it in my pocket and went outside where the warmth of daylight had gone and a cold, creepy feeling was settling outside. I walked to my home on roads that were eerily quiet. Strange, I thought, that I have not seen another person since I had read the strange sign. The moon was full, and after a while I saw my rooftop just past the trees on Belladonna Lane. Once home, I entered the house and turned on the lamp. I took out the paw and put it on the table. I sat down on my cushioned chair that helped me relax from the tension I felt from the twitching fingers. The words that had been written on the stand kept running through my head. Picking it up with great courage, I thought what harm could come from making a wish. I thought of my birthday parties and how I could blow out the candles and make a wish that never came true. Ha, I thought, this is just a joke. I looked at my walls with paint beginning to wear off, the floor that had begun to acquire mold, and the ceiling with water dripping every few minutes, even though it was not raining. I looked at the paw with an uneasy feeling that it could read my mind. I'm just being silly. It's just an old paw. I picked the monkey's paw up from the table, and my heart began to beat faster. I wished for a nicer house. Nothing happened. I squeezed the paw, hoping a miracle would happen, but I ended up just going to bed. I heard my parents come home around 10 p.m. The moon was shining through my clear window, making my room appear dimly lit. I was soon asleep, with the monkey's paw all but forgotten. In the morning, I smelled the wonderful aroma of bacon, eggs, pancakes, waffles, sausage, and even hot cocoa. Usually, I just had cereal for breakfast. Mom was in the kitchen, smiling. She said, "I have some great news." I sat down and asked, "What is the great news?" Mom said, "We are moving to a brand new house." This was great. My wish had come true. "Wow, Mom, that's great. Where's Dad?" Mom was quiet for a moment and sat down next to me, putting her hand on my arm. "Dad and I are getting a divorce." I sat there in shock. It wasn't until later when I began to think about the cryptic message on the stand that had once held the monkey's paw that I considered the connection. That's ridiculous, I thought. But Mom and Dad never had a fight, or even said a harsh word to each other. The next few weeks, we spent packing and moving into our new house across town. The rooms were bright and clean. The house was double the size of our old house. My room was much larger and the paint smelled fresh. Unfortunately, I had to change schools, so I missed my friends. I was happy living in the new house since it was in perfect condition and no more water is dripping my room. There's only one thing missing from my new house. Dad. It was odd that I had not heard from my dad. Shut up, Fred. From my dad since my mom told me we were moving. Mom just said he was busy moving into his own place and would come over when he had time. As I unpacked, I came across the monkey's paw. I held it in my hand, wondering what I should do with it. I could bring it back to the vacant house where I found it. I could throw it away, or maybe, just maybe, I could make another wish. Afraid, yet not afraid, I raised the paw in my right hand and decided to make a wish. I wished to have my parents back together again. The monkey's paw felt like it had twisted around my hand, and I jumped from shock. I sat there, scared of what consequences now awaited me. As I slept that night, I woke to sudden sounds. I heard voices overlapping each other, yelling. My heart seemed to beat faster than ever. Who's in the house? The fighting from downstairs made me tense up in my bed and not be able to go back to sleep. I heard jumping, shouting, banging, yelling. And this made me want to cry right then because I knew what was happening. I got out of my bed and began taking slow steps to the stairs. The wooden floors creaked with each slight step I made, causing my heart to beat faster. I slowly walked down the steps. The jumping, shouting, banging, and yelling was getting so loud it was nearly unbearable. I covered my ears and looked around the corner, and I see my dad. He'd lost his job and his apartment, and he had nowhere else to go. Since my parents weren't divorced yet, he said he was moving into our new house. This wasn't what I wanted. I wanted my parents together, happy, like they used to be before the monkey's paw. Unsure of what to do, I grabbed the monkey's paw and made my last and final wish. I wish I could go back in time. The yelling stopped. My heart slowed. I could no longer think. Everything went black. When I awoke, I was laying on my back, looking up into my mother's eyes. She looked much younger. With panic, I realized I couldn't move or speak. My mom was making funny sounds and putting a blanket over my body. I looked up and saw a baby mobile rotating over my head, spinning and spinning. My vision was blurred enough so I couldn't see the ceiling. I moved my head to the side and looked in front of me. I was in a crib. What was I doing in a crib? I was in complete despair. I looked down at my own arm. This was not my arm. It was the arm of a baby. The realization hit me like a volcanic eruption. I was a 13-year-old boy living in the body of a newborn baby. This must be a nightmare. I'll wake up and be back in my own body. As my eyes cleared, I looked a little closer at the mobile, and hanging in the middle was a monkey's paw. I remembered the words, "You may get more than you wish for." The years went by, and I finally grew up to the point where I could write down my story. I've had 13 years of thinking what I should do with the monkey's paw. I would grind it in a blender, then burn it up, then bury it so deep no one would ever find it again. I did this late one night when my parents were both asleep. The monkey's paw was dangerous, and I had to be rid of it. The world had to be rid of it. Once the deed was done, I snuck back into the house through an unlocked window, showered, and went to bed. I woke up the next morning and felt as though a large weight had been lifted off my shoulders. That day, on the way home from school, I felt a sense of déjà vu. I was walking home to my old house with the peeling paint and leaky ceiling, and saw an old worn-out sign. It was the same ancient rusted sign, and just beyond the sign was the same building. Was it fate? I walked over to that same vacant building and stood at that same door where I had stood many years ago. I had destroyed the monkey's paw, so there was no way, right? I opened the creaking door and stood motionless for just a moment, or maybe two. I walked across the room to the window, to the ancient stand, and looked to see what I knew what could not possibly be. The monkey's paw sat as though untouched upon the same ancient stand. Be careful what you wish for.